After her miscarriage at 9 weeks, Eliza received little acknowledgement. Friends said things like, "At least it was early," or "You can always try again." At work, no one asked how she was doing. Her loss, profound and life-altering, seemed to vanish in the eyes of others. She felt isolated and confused, grieving someone no one else had met, mourning a future no one else had imagined. Welcome to this mini-series on understanding the language of grief, loss, and trauma. My name is Nathalie Himmelrich. I'm a somatic practitioner, psychological therapist, educator, and author, specializing in grief and trauma, and the host of the How to Deal with Grief and Trauma podcast. Grief and trauma are deeply human experiences, yet many of us struggle to describe what we are going through, or to understand what others are facing. The vocabulary of loss is vast, varied, and sometimes overwhelming. In this short podcast episode series, we'll explore the different types of grief, loss, and trauma that people encounter throughout life. Each mini-episode serves both as an educational tool and a compassionate companion for anyone trying to make sense of their own experience with grief, loss, and trauma, or someone who is supporting someone else who is. These terms are more than labels. They are doorways into greater understanding, healing, and connection. Whether you are a bereaved parent, a caregiver, a therapist, or someone walking alongside a grieving friend or someone who's experienced trauma, these bite-sized episodes aim to give you language, insight, and tools. Each one includes a definition, some key considerations, an explanation of why it matters, relevant podcast episodes, and frequently asked questions that I have been asked by my clients and you, the listener of the podcast. And my answers are all grounded in both professional and lived experience. So let's begin. Invisible grief refers to the mourning of a loss that is not acknowledged, recognized, or validated by others. This can include early pregnancy loss, the loss of a pet, estrangement, chronic illness, or any grief that doesn't align with conventional expectations or rituals. So when grief is invisible, it doesn't mean it's less painful. Often it hurts more because it lacks communal support or spaces to be expressed. Invisible grief may go unspoken, but it lives in the body, mind, and spirit just as deeply as visible losses. If people don't see or acknowledge your grief, it can compound the pain and add confusion, shame, or self-doubt. Validating invisible grief allows people to honor their experience, find support, and give language to their emotional reality. As I mentioned in previous episode, grief needs to be witnessed and needs to be shared, to be really felt and healed and integrated. In the How to Deal with Grief and Trauma podcast, I've interviewed many people who've experienced pregnancy losses, miscarriages. So please check with the episode overview. Those kind of losses are described there, so go and check out which ones fit for you. So what are some examples of invisible loss? As mentioned, it can be miscarriage, pet loss, infertility is another one, dementia caregiving, estrangement, and more. So why don't people acknowledge this grief? There's many cultural norms, a lack of understanding, and also discomfort with this kind of ambiguous losses that they couldn't really point down to something tangible that they see tangible. Is it okay to grieve even if no one else sees it as a real loss? Of course, your grief is valid regardless of others' reactions or their opinions. So how do I find support for invisible grief? Seek out spaces or people who validate your experience. Many grief groups are formed around invisible losses. There's books, online communities, and therapists who are grief literate and trauma-informed. Why do I feel ashamed of grieving something others ignore? You've internalized cultural minimization, but your feelings are legitimate and worthy. Can invisible grief turn into depression? It can, especially if it's silenced over time, because expression and connection are vital. As I always say, grief needs to be witnessed and shared. Is it helpful to talk about it? Yes, even naming your grief can be a step toward healing. And how can I support someone whose grief is invisible to others? Listen, acknowledge their pain, and resist the urge to minimize or fix. The next episode will be about existential grief, so stay tuned. I hope this episode has helped you feel more grounded in the language of loss, grief, or trauma, and maybe even offered you some clarity, validation, or insight into your own experience or the experience of someone you care about. Grief and trauma are deeply personal, yet universal. When we can name what we're feeling, we take one powerful step closer to healing and the integration of our experience back into our life. If this series resonates with you, I invite you to keep exploring. You'll find more resources, courses, and ways to work with me at nathaliehimmelrich.com. And of course, you're always welcome to revisit any of the episodes whenever you need a gentle reminder that you're not alone. Until next time, take good care of your heart.